Hello everyone, I am Rajeshwari Moganty, Professor at the Department of Biochemistry in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. Now today we are going to do a module in paper 3. Paper 3, as you know, is on thermodynamics of living systems and bioenergetics. Now this module is on the third law of thermodynamics. So far in this paper you have done the zeroth law, first law and second law. So this is a third law we are doing. Although the third law of thermodynamics is not very popular, nevertheless it's quite important because it is associated with the temperature of the that is the Kelvin temperature. Now what does actually to refresh yourselves, what does the zeroth law say? Now in zeroth law you have studied that if three systems A, B and C, if A and B are in equilibrium and B and C are in equilibrium, it implies that A and C are in equilibrium. It's a very simple law. Now whereas in the first law you studied about that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can only be converted from one system to another system, or in one form to another form, electrical energy to heat energy, or heat energy to chemical energy, and so on and so forth. Now the second law, which is much more popular in the sense that is very much used in understanding the living systems, especially bioenergetics, that deals with the entropy. Now entropy, as you know, is a system that the entropy of the universe is increasing. So generally entropy and disorder are associated with each other. If a reaction has to proceed, it is actually the entropy increases, that means the disorder is increased. So that is so far we studied. Now the third law, let us come to the third law, that is today's topic. What does it say? It actually deals with the temperature, that is the lowest temperature that a system can theoretically attain. Okay. Now this is not popular in the sense that it has not direct application to in biological systems, but this law has been used in several indirect way in several systems. Now what are they? Like this third law of thermodynamics is crucial because it actually supports the second law, that regarding the entropy and the lowest temperature that any system can reach. So it is one way it is supporting the second law. In addition to that, it also gives us the new the parameters like specific heat and other terms. So the third law has a lot of significance. Now with that small introduction, what are the objectives of today's class? The objectives of today's class are that to understand what is third law of thermodynamics, as I just mentioned, and secondly, what is its significance? How can you understand the other laws or the other bioenergetics in terms of third law? Now also understand the terms like absolute zero. This term keeps coming because normally in thermodynamics you don't deal with the temperature of centigrade or Fahrenheit, but you always use the term Kelvin. So you need to get acquainted or to be I want you to introduce you to the term absolute zero. Now in addition to that, the terms like specific heat, vapor pressure, latent heat of melting, and thermal expansion coefficient, and all these terms actually evolved from the third law, indirectly you can say. Also now, what are the applications of the third law of thermodynamics in brief, and to understand some of the applications in terms of third law. So these are the basic objectives. At the end of the class, you are able to understand these terms as well as the significance of third law. So the little bit of introduction, the third law, that is actually thermodynamics studies generally explains the transformation of energy, okay, and also such transformations are occurring ceaselessly, endlessly in the living systems. So you need to understand the thermodynamics of the energy processes in living systems. Now this is actually probably important because it differences between the states like health and disease. What happens in disease? What happens in health? Why everybody is so healthy, but suddenly what happens to their bioenergetics in a disease or in any pathogenesis? Disease, of course, is the last stage of the process. So in pathogenesis, that is any disease, and of course, the disease is a stage and death is the end product. So in all these stages, what kind of energetics changes that are happening actually can be understood very nicely from thermodynamic point of view. Now moreover, the thermodynamics studies actually gives an elusive notion of order and disorder, which also can be respectively be very hallmarks of the life and death. So you know that within terms of this entropy and disorder, you can explain the terms like life and death. That actually one of the terms we will be doing in the next module is about the entropy, that is the ATP, and how is it different in terms of life and death. That of course we will be doing in the next module. Now these simultaneous, these are kind of similarities between life and death and disorder, order and disorder, actually nicely explains the biology and medicine in terms of thermodynamics. So thermodynamics is not just for engineering people or for a rocket science, but it explains so beautifully the living systems. So these similarities suggest that thermodynamics might provide an unifying paradigm for many of these sciences like medical sciences, which explains the multitude of the life's processes, life's manifestations on the basis of simple, basic thermodynamic physical principles. So that way you need to appreciate the understanding of the life process in terms of thermodynamics. So when I mentioned to the similarities between thermodynamics and clinical sciences, that is health, disease, it is very important, or it is very appropriate at this stage to remember two of the scientists which are actually contributed so much to the basics of fundamentals of thermodynamics are von Meyer and also Helmholtz. These two scientists are actually, if you will be surprised to know, they are not physicists, but they are basically clinicians or the physicians, you can say anything. So that that tells you that how much the clinicians are interested in thermodynamics point of view, and also have contributed enormously, and they are actually the two pioneering scientists. That is why I made a mention that it is justified, and also it gives respect to these two scientists who have contributed enormously to thermodynamics, which is actually a classical physics subject, but as actually contributed by clinicians. Now in brief, what is third law of thermodynamics? We have done a bit of introduction. Now the third law of thermodynamics is lesser known of the three major thermodynamic laws, rather four laws, if you include the first one also, zeroth law. The third law of thermodynamics refers to a state known as absolute zero. Now this term I used it, but we have to understand in depth what is absolute zero. Now this is the lowest temperature in the Kelvin temperature scale. In actuality, no object or any system can actually have a temperature of 0 Kelvin because of the second law of thermodynamics, which you can correlate it much later. Therefore, the second law in partially, you can say that implies that heat can never spontaneously move from a colder body to a hotter body. Remember, the heat can flow from a hotter to cold naturally or spontaneously, which means spontaneously means thermodynamically favorable, but thermodynamically it is not favorable for any energy or heat to flow from colder to a hotter body. This is actually a gist of the second law. Now, so therefore, as a system approaches absolute zero, what are you trying to say? That any system which has to approach to zero, it will eventually have to take the energy from the surroundings, that is nearby. So if it draws energy continuously from the surroundings, that means it can never obtain absolute zero, right? So in that case, in that sense, this state is not physically possible, which means attaining the lowest temperature, that is a Kelvin temperature, is physically not possible, but theoretically or mathematically it can be possible, and which we call it is the limit of the universe. Now, continuing the third law of thermodynamics, in short you can say in many ways the third law of thermodynamics, the entropy of a pure perfect crystal is 0. That means at 0 degree Kelvin. Now, the entropy is a property of matter and energy discussed by the second law of thermodynamics. Therefore, the third law of thermodynamics means that as the temperature of a system approaches to 0, absolute 0, the entropy approaches a constant. So, in case of a pure perfect crystal, this constant is 0. Therefore, a pure perfect crystal, you can say, is one in which every molecule is identical and in a molecular alignment that is perfect. Perfect means 100% perfect even throughout the substance. That means every molecule, every alignment in every space is perfectly in order in a perfect crystal. Then you can say it is a perfect crystal. But that is anyway is not possible. For non-pure crystals or those with less than perfect alignment, there will be some energy associated with the imperfections. So, entropy can never be 0. So, only perfect crystal will have a 0. That is what it means. There is no entropy and there is no mixing since the crystal is pure. That is why it becomes. So, this I will explain in the next slide. In a mixed, suppose we want to say mixed crystal, that means where a crystal having both atomic or a molecular species, like for example A and B, if you take, there are many possible arrangements of A and B. Therefore, entropy is associated with arrangement of the atoms and molecules. But most of the direct use of the third law of thermodynamics occurs in ultra low temperatures of chemistry and physics. The applications of this law have been used to predict the response of various materials and to temperature changes. Now, you can see in the figure here on the left side, you can call it as a pure crystal or a perfect crystal. In this, you see all the molecules are arranged in a perfect alignment with regular spacing, and also they can say the temperature is 0 degree Kelvin. Therefore, entropy is 0 and the number of W1 is equal to 1. Whereas, if we slight increase in temperature, you can see the molecules have moved because of heat, they have taken up the heat, and therefore, there is a rearrangement. Here what you see is T is obviously more than 0 degree Kelvin. So, T is more than 0, greater than 0. Therefore, entropy is greater than 0 because there is a disorder, and therefore, W is greater than 1. Therefore, in the first figure or on the left side, what you see is a single possible configuration for the system at absolute 0. Only one microstate is accessible, that therefore, entropy S equal to K into ln W, that is 0. Entropy is 0. But this is not the case in natural systems in a practical state. Therefore, if you increase the temperature greater than absolute 0, multiple microstates are possible because so many arrangements can be done, and therefore, this number is accessible microstates is greater than 1, and therefore, entropy is S equal to K ln W is greater than 0. Okay. So far we have introduced you the terms for entropy and absolute 0, that is a Kelvin scale. Although the third law is very simple, people came up with different ways of expressing the same third law. So, there are many different ways of statements and given by different scientists. One is the Gibbs-Helmholtz statement. Then another one is the Nernst has given his own way of stating the third law of thermodynamics, and the third is the Planck statement. So, let us see what do they interpret this third law in their own terms. So the statements of the third law, one of them we will see, of thermodynamics is actually concerned with the behavior of the systems in equilibrium as temperature approaches absolute zero. So here I have given the equation entropy is equal to integral of 0 to T, that is a temperature T approaches to 0, is equal to dQ by T plus S0. Now dQ is the change in the energy and T is the temperature. Now as long as we deal with the differences in entropy, that is delta S, the knowledge of this S0 is actually unnecessary. So therefore you can write that absolute energy is important, and you can write F equal to U minus Ts, or in a general terms free energy G equal to H, that is enthalpy, minus Ts, that is temperature into entropy. So this is the in a mathematical formula we can state the third law. So the, as I told in the beginning, that we can interpret it in three different ways, rather been interpreted by three different scientists. The Gibbs-Helmholtz equation gives you G equal to free energy H plus T into dou G, that is small changes in entropy free energy with changes in temperature dou T, and this, if you take, it's in a general term, if you take isothermal processes, what happens is the temperature is constant, therefore delta G becomes equal to delta H plus T into dou delta G by dou T. So at constant pressure, now this is at a constant pressure, this is an isothermal process. So if you combine these two equations, what happens? The limitation of the entropy, the free energy as T tends to absolute zero becomes equal to the limitation of the enthalpy where temperature tends to absolute zero. Statements of the third law can also extend by Nernst, which in his own terms explained. This is a graphical representation of what we just studied in the equation point of view. So if you see the graph, that as delta H approaches to the zero, absolute zero, the delta G also approaches to zero. This is simple way. So Nernst actually postulated the same thing, that limitation of T approaches 0, dou delta G, that is change in delta G, free energy change by temperature, is 0, as well as enthalpy change as function as a changes in temperature is also 0. Now the same thing Nernst postulated in terms of entropy. So far we studied in terms of the delta G and delta H. Now this can be extended to change in the free energy dou delta G by dou T equal to dou G2, that is the second stage, by dou T minus dou G1, that is the first free energy change, by dt. So this is actually equal to limitation T tends to 0 approaches absolute 0, where bracket S1 minus S2, that is the state 1 to state 2. So that becomes 0. This is in a different way of expressing. So finally, what you the same thing what we shown in the graphical is can be put in his own words. What does Nernst say? All reactions in a liquid or in a gas, when they are in thermal equilibrium, takes place with no change in entropy in the neighborhood of the absolute zero. So remember, again I repeat, all those reactions in taking place in a liquid or in a solid, if they are in thermal equilibrium, takes place with there is no change in entropy, because in the neighborhood of the absolute zero. That is important. This is the same, but in terms of the entropy he has explained. Now let us see what Planck has to say, interpret the third law. Here again it is the same graph where delta H approaches to 0 as well as delta free energy approaches to 0. The graph is same, but what he says is limitation dou delta change in dg by dt at constant pressure is 0. Similarly, delta H by delta T limitation where T tends to 0 is also 0. Therefore, he says limit entropy T tends to 0 also becomes 0. So, in the same graphical representation, now Planck has to say in this formation, in this statement, that the entropy of a true equilibrium state of a system at absolute 0 is 0. So, this is his way of expressing. Instead of taking two states, he says the entropy of a true equilibrium where the two systems are in equilibrium at absolute 0 is 0. So, this is a very simple way of expressing. Now, this is a statement where it says that it is impossible to reduce the temperature of any system to absolute 0 using a finite number of processes. So, what does it say? It is you won't be able to bring the temperature of any system to that temperature, that is the lowest temperature possible, theoretically possible to absolute 0 using a finite number of processes. So, all of them literally mean that the absolute temperature is the lowest temperature which is theoretically possible but practically not possible, and if you reach at that stage, the entropy of that system is 0, as simple as that. Now, what understanding the after understanding or getting acquainted with the third law of thermodynamics, it is amply clear that it is at the lowest temperature cannot be reached practically. Now, what does it mean when we talk about biological reactions or a biological systems? Because our objective is to understand the bioenergetics in terms of thermodynamics. That is the goal of this whole paper. So, in biological systems, there is a very complex system, that it is very complex because so many cells, so many reactions are happening at the same time without knowing with the next molecule sitting in the same cell or in the same medium or in the same organ. But they are all well defined. They are all well defined structures. They are arising from with a high three-dimensional order. That means even though the system is very complex, it leads to a very ordered structure, three-dimensional structure which is very ordered. For example, if you take in a protein, you are seeing a very ordered structure. Now, how is it possible? This can be contradictory to what we've been talking about in terms of entropy. Entropy actually leads to disorder. So, how can you connect these two when a system is very complex and leading to an ordered structure? This is not a paradigm, but this has its own understanding if you understand if you really understand the process of entropy, understand the term of entropy in terms of the surroundings. So, therefore, correspondingly the low entropy and high information content is possible. Okay. Now, that means the high information content is there when the entropy is low. As discussed earlier, now water has a strong tendency to form hydrogen bonds. So, if you lower the temperature, obviously the ice crystals are formed, and it has it interact, which makes the biomolecules also to arrange themselves in a very nice tertiary structure. Now, in this formation of the tertiary structure of protein, some polar and hydrophilic molecules are actually exposed or on the surface where the water is there. So, they interact with the water. So, that is how the ordered structure is attained. But if you look at the hydrophobic moieties or the groups or the side chains in a protein, aliphatic, for example, aliphatic groups, lysines and leucine and valine, these ones, or any aromatic groups if you take, they pack closely together to protect against water. That is why name came hydrophobic. So, you don't find them on the surface, but they find in the interior of this thing, or they are also called the buried groups. So, this is how actually thermodynamics in a way deciding or the deciding factor in the formation of the three-dimensional structure of the protein. I think this point you must understand in a more clear way, that why the three-dimensional structure is formed, because at the same time thermodynamic laws are maintained, and there is an urgent need for you to understand in terms of thermodynamics. Now, in continuation of our understanding of the entropy, although we studied in the previous second law, but here it is more important to understand in terms of degree Kelvin. Therefore, it must be remembered that the T delta S, that is delta G equal to minus T delta S, is dominant term in the determination of the free energy, because for any reaction the free energy has to be negative. Okay. So, in protein folding, the term T delta S dominates more than the delta H. Okay. Although delta H free energy, the enthalpy change is important, but you must remember that the T delta S is a major deciding or a dominant factor in the determination of the free change in protein folding. That means when a protein is three-dimensional structure, native structure is formed, it is a T delta S much more important. Now, having said that, in the smaller systems, the surface energies also contribute very much to the free energy, and therefore, in the spatial fixation of one single amino acid group in chain of a polypeptide chain molecule, because protein is a polypeptide chain, even if you take one group, that actually decreases the entropy to about 0.05 electronic volt. So, you can understand that the each amino group, each side chain or the amino acid side chain, single amino acid chain can contribute about -0.05 electron volts to the entropy. So, you can imagine a 100 amino acid group, a protein containing 100 amino acids will have so much. This is equal to 1.2 kilocalories and per mole, of course, at 25 degrees centigrade. This is considering as a normal standard conditions. This is just an example to make you appreciate that in a protein there are so many amino acids, each one is contributing so much. So, the T delta S or the entropy is a major factor. I hope I made that point very clear. Now, similarly, if you consider the entropy, considerable entropy effects arise due to the formation of base pairing in DNA in the cell. We only talked so much about the protein, but similarly in a DNA, when you have the base pairing T and AT and GC, same kind of phenomena occurs, that because of the water and the hydrophilic interaction, the contribution will be so much that the entropy is a deciding factor. So, now after talking about the living systems, proteins, DNA, which are the biomolecules, the major components or the the molecules for life, let us just understand one small feature in the evolution. How does evolution and thermodynamics are related? Just one thought on that I would like to say is that to understand evolution of the thermodynamic aspects of the energy efficiency, whenever we talk about efficiency, what does it mean? That efficiency will be, output will be higher with the less amount of energy input or less amount of work that is used, energy that is used. So, you need a output higher as compared to what you are putting in gaining in terms of what you are using to gain that particular energy. So, the efficiency is higher. So, this ability of living systems to increase complexity is not an accidental phenomena. So, what does it mean? That means that if you want to have an efficiency, you need to increase complexity, because a simple system will give only one. If you have a multiple motors, you will have a better or a higher efficiency. If you use only one motor, you will have only less efficient work that is done. So, by evolutionarily, the nature has developed a system where it is actually made deliberately, brought a complexity so that the efficiency will be higher. So, then n number of examples, if you do it to the biology, you find this. So, the point I am making is that evolutionary point of view, the thermodynamics actually evolved because it is not an accidental phenomena, but complexity is a vital for efficiency, and life was therefore compelled to increase the complexity in the organisms, therefore, which are actually become a survival. So, for survival it has increased the complexity. Now, this can be explained in terms of thermodynamics. The course of evolution can be rephrased as survival of the most efficient rather than the survival of the most fittest, or it is efficient. So, this has been taken quote by Dolev and Elitzur in an article which I have quoted in the e-text file. So, the absolute temperature and thermodynamics. Now, who has actually introduced? I think it is worthwhile to remember, and as the name says, Lord Kelvin, which has 1848 has introduced this term, the scale for absolute zero temperature, that is now universally known as -273 degrees Celsius is equal to 1 degree Kelvin. But to be precise, you must remember -273.15 degrees Celsius is actually equal to 1 Kelvin. So this just shows in a pictorial form that on the left hand side you have the minus 0, that is absolute 0, that is minus 273 degree for water, and then if you take the Fahrenheit this thing, it is 459, but if you take in terms of the degree centigrade, it becomes minus 273 degree centigrade. These are just different scales to in comparison with the absolute 0. Applications. Now what are the applications? As I told in earlier, that there are no direct applications of the third law, but it is actually has implications indirectly with many terms that are introduced, many things which we can understand through third law. So one is that which is mostly used in the understanding the materials, different kinds of materials, how these material actually respond to the changes in temperature, their behavior, both physical and chemical behavior when you change the temperature change. So most of the different uses of the third law are actually occur at low temperature because of minus 273 degree, and in chemistry and physics. And the application, these are the direct applications. The application of this law have been used to predict the response of various materials to temperature changes, to understand the material. So this is one of the very useful thing, because if you have a new material or you want to make an alloy or you want to make a substance, develop a material for your requirement for whatever purpose, you need to understand the their behavioral changes. That can only be done by temperature changes. Now these relationships have become the core or the main part of many science disciplines. It evolved, this temperature changes subject has evolved into different branches. Even though the third law of thermodynamics is not used directly, I repeatedly tell you that almost not so much as the other thermodynamic laws. So this is just one term which is very common, and you must use it because the terms which is called the specific heat and heat capacity. Now specific, because there is a temperature change, you have to get to know of these terms. Specific heat is another physical property of the matter, and all matter or all substances has a temperature associated with it. So every material has one specific heat which is internal property of that particular material. I will just give you examples in a little while. Therefore, if the temperature of the subject material, whatever material you are doing, is a direct measure of the motion of the molecules. So if you increase the temperature of the molecule, how they behave. For example, I have shown in the left hand of the figure is that temperature, lower temperature. But when you increase the temperature, you look at the right hand side of the figure, that the molecules are moving because there is a heat that is generated and the movement is there. So similarly, how much they move, what is their move, and how the material behaves is something you can understand in terms of specific heat and heat capacity. Now in terms of how do you calculate the specificity of any substance. Now the temperature of gain, the temperature of the gain or a loss of heat energy is actually given by term S, specific heat, and the heat capacity is given by the letter C. So therefore, if the specific heat S is equal to X, that is the heat, and the temperature rise is given by delta T, then S is equal to X, which is expressed either in joules, different scales can be used, joules or calories, divided by mass, that is M, into delta T, that is a change in temperature. Therefore, S is equal to X by mass into delta T, that is on the denominator mass in delta T. So it will have a per gram heat change. Heat per gram is the unit. You must mention the units always. So here I have given you some examples or the properties which are in the textbooks, in the literature about some of the materials and their specific heat and that is a heat capacity. The first column is the material substance air, and then it has a specific heat, then it has a C that is actually expressed for 100 grams, that is heat capacity. If you see in the table, the water has the highest specific heat and highest heat capacity. So this is again the vapor. The other terms which are associated with the third law are the vapor pressure, with specific heat and heat capacity I just talked about, vapor pressure and heat of vaporization. Now there is one more term which is again you can specific heat, heat capacity, thermal expansion, all are related to temperature changes related to the behavior of the substance with change in temperature. So the thermal expansion is one more term. Now what is thermal expansion? Is the tendency of the matter to change its shape. So far we talked about the movement and the heat changes only, but here we are talking about physical changes like its shape or the area or the volume in response to change in temperature. So how much it is expanding, whether the volume or the area and so on. So the temperature is a monotonic function of the average molecular kinetic energy of any substance. Now when a substance we are heating it, the kinetic energy of the molecule is obviously increasing because the heat is taken and the molecule keep take the heat and then move, rotate, or it can move further away from the where they are presently stated. Therefore the molecules begin vibrating. Because heat energy is remember that heat energy is a small amount of energy, so it only brings the vibrational or rotational changes, but it doesn't go into the electronic state. So the molecules keep vibrating or rotating, and therefore they maintain a greater average separation. They move between each other. There is a lot of distance. Therefore materials which contract with increasing temperature are unusual, very rare, and thus this effect is limited to in size and only occurs within a limited temperature changes. So the relative expansion or strain, we can say when it is a strain divided by the change in the expansion divided by the change in the temperature is called the coefficient of thermal expansion. Like heat capacity and coefficient constant, you have here coefficient of thermal expansion, which generally varies with temperature. The coefficient of thermal expansion actually describes how the size of an object changes with change in temperature. Therefore, specifically it measures the fractional change in size per degree change in temperature at a constant pressure. Therefore, several types of coefficients have been developed. For example, volumetric thermal expansion coefficient, area, linear, and so on. So this depends on the particular application and which dimensions are considered that is important. For example, if you take solids, one might only be concerned with the change along a length or some area. So similarly, volumetric thermal expansion is the most basic thermal expansion coefficient. As you can guess, it is for the mostly liquids or the fluids. In general, a substance expands or contracts when temperature changes, and with expansion or contraction occurring in all directions. Therefore, the substances that expand at the same rate in every direction are called isotropic. That means they uniformly change the material, that is expand in all directions. For isotropic materials, the area and volume thermal expansion coefficients are respectively approximately twice or 3 times larger than the linear thermal expansion coefficients. So some of them only move one direction linearly, or some of them move in all directions in a similar fashion, then it is called the isotropic. Therefore, mathematical definitions of these coefficients are defined for both solids and liquids and gases. Forgot to mention that even for gases. Therefore, generally used for the, I'll explain this only with the one of the terms, that is a volumetric. General volumetric thermal expansion coefficient is the general case of a gas or a liquid or a solid. The volumetric coefficient of thermal expansion is equal to volumetric thermal expansion coefficient given by the formula alpha equal to 1 by V into delta V by delta T, where alpha is a volume thermal expansion coefficient, V is the area of the object in meters cube, then delta V is a change in volume, delta T is in change in the temperature in degree Kelvin. So with this, actually the second application what of the, so far we use those terms which are associated with third law, and the second application, major application, gives that is a supports the implication of the first two laws. So the third law basically affirms the first two laws, and the third law of thermodynamics demonstrates another detectable, absolute, all encompassing important natural law. Therefore, it is important to remember that the laws of thermodynamics demonstrate very ordered rules of energy interaction which the entire universe must obey, be it in one single cell, one reaction, or the entire universe. The thermodynamic laws, all the thermodynamic laws of thermodynamics apply uniformly. There is no change or no exception to this. So with this, let us summarize what we learnt in the third law of thermodynamics in this module. The third law of thermodynamics is sometimes stated as follows regarding the properties of the systems in equilibrium at absolute zero temperature. The entropy of a perfect crystal at absolute zero is exactly equal to 0. Absolute 0 or the 0 Kelvin, the system must be in a state with minimum possible energy, and the above statement of the third law holds true provided the perfect crystal has only one minimum energy state. Therefore, the relation between Kelvin and degree Celsius is equal to K equal to degree plus 273 degree Celsius. And of course, as I mentioned, that third law was given in different ways by Gibbs, Helmholtz, Nernst and Planck. We have already discussed that. By different laws, Gibbs, Helmholtz said all reactions in a liquid or solid in thermal equilibrium takes place with no change in entropy in the neighborhood of the absolute zero. Whereas Nernst put it in different way, it is impossible to reduce the temperature of a system to absolute zero using a finite number of processes. That means physically it is not possible. Planck made it much simpler, rather simplest form, that entropy of a true equilibrium state of a system at absolute zero is 0. And of course, the evolutionary point of view, you can understand that increase in the complexity has arisen because to understand the efficiency in terms of to reach higher efficiency, the complexity was important, and therefore the thermodynamics, due to evolution, thermodynamics plays an important role, and therefore you can say survival of the most efficient is what is the evolution actually thought of implemented. And then of course we have studied the applications, response to materials, specific heat, and why it is how it gives support to the previous laws. So in this module I made it amply clear that the third law of thermodynamics is the most important. Nevertheless, it doesn't have any direct application in biology, but it nevertheless explains it gives support to the previous laws, and also the most important property, that is absolute zero, that the degree Kelvin, absolute zero is minus 273 degree Kelvin, can be attained only in a pure form, pure crystal, which means in a natural systems, in a physically it is impossible to attain that. So with that, all the thermodynamic laws have been introduced to you. Now in the next classes we will be doing the bioenergetics and how the living systems actually use the thermodynamics in everyday life. Thank you.